Welcome back to another episode of BHAW Radio. We're at episode 66, and we got longtime co-host back on the air, Jordan Tom. Welcome, Jordan.
Hey, what's going on, BHAW family?
We got a special guest tonight, and we got even a other special guest kind of making a cameo, Patrick Simpson on the show, and Brother William is here too. Thank you. Thanks for coming on. So
2 for 1 special, baby.
So Patrick was 2006 grad, team captain, NCAA qualifier, currently the dean of his former grade school at the middle school at Montgomery Bell Academy outside Nashville, Tennessee, and the head high school wrestling coach there as well. We got we got Willie in the background getting out of club wrestling practice. Welcome to the show, guys.
Hey, thanks for having us. Really appreciate you having me on. And I've got William right here. He's helping run the club program, and he just got done with practice.
Yep.
So
I couldn't resist the chance to show my face on BHAW radio, and since B-Row doesn't invite me on enough times, I have to force myself into it.
Dang, you're saying I don't invite you.
Commentating for the live matches hasn't been the same.
What?
The live match commentary at West Point hasn't been the same without you. We miss you on the calls.
So William, what you just got a club practice? Any inspirational words you had to the kids tonight?
Oh, just tell them, to follow their dreams and work hard for it. And things will happen for them. That's about all I got. I wish I could be a better example for them, but that's where Patrick steps in and does that for me. I can talk good talk, but he sets a great example for these kids at this school. I miss being around the Army wrestling team, but it's awesome being home and being with my brother again, and Philip and Patrick, and getting to coach with them in this club team that we got going down here in Nashville.
Yeah, it seems like it. When I was down there to visit a couple months ago, it seemed like not much has changed. And from the looks of Patrick said he was weighing about like 159. Looks like you guys are in the same weight class right now.
yeah, we're pretty close. Yeah. That's part of the reason I started dropping. I realized he was coming back in town. I need to get myself back in shape. Yeah, he just had club practice number 1 tonight, and they were going over all the basics. So good, don't lock your hands. Here's how you do a head throw. Here's the cow catcher. Doing all the good stuff.
Awesome. Well, Will, I appreciate
moves right from the get-go.
Well, I appreciate you coming on. We got to focus on the task at hand, though. We
all have fun tonight.
We only got 3 hours to do this one. It's gonna be a long episode.
Well, my son Matthew will be listening in intently, as he always does.
Yes. So Patrick, language tonight for sure. No hex. We don't need any H-bombs.
I'll keep it clean.
So tell us a little bit about kind of your role there. We'll get into it later, but you're the head wrestling coach now. You took over for your dad, not too long ago. So talk to us a little bit about what you're doing now, and then we'll go through your whole journey after that.
Yeah. So the school I work at is a 7th grade through 12th grade all boys college preparatory school. And we have our lower school, 7th and 8th grade, and our upper school is the 9th through 12th. I'm the dean of students of our 7th and 8th grade, and I teach 8th grade cultural geography. So I was one of the dirt majors at West Point. It's kind of funny when I went to school where I'm at now. So me and all my brothers went to this school, Montgomery Bell Academy. And when I was in 8th grade, probably my least favorite class was geography. The reason I ended up majoring in geography in college is because that's all the wrestling ORs were in the geography department.
I was going to say, in 20 years, you're going to be like the Colonel Palka at
yeah.
Like legit.
Yeah, no, he's a legend. Really, I know this was the case for Philip. He needed all the help he could get, but I was kind of in that realm too. And all the wrestling ORs were just really nice and helpful, and understood if we missed a day, what wrestling was all about. If we were gone for a day at a tournament, they were pretty lenient for us and willing to help us out. So that's why I majored in geography. And here I am teaching geography back at my old school.
Probably one of the few dirt majors actually using your degree.
I know, right? Yeah. Yeah, I remember. I should go back. I can't remember. There was like a day where I think plebes can go around to visit different departments. It's like a recruiting day from what I remember.
Yep.
And so I think I went to one of the engineering departments, like systems engineering, and one of the professors there said, nobody will ever use the dirt major. I should go back and tell them, look at me. Yeah. So I'm the dean of students of our 7th and 8th grade, teach 8th grade geography, and then the head coach of our high school program. Yeah. So which my dad's been the head coach here. He was the head coach for 28 years or so, and then stepped down at the beginning of last year, and I took over. So this is my 2nd year.
How was it hard for him to step down and for you to take over? Or was it kind of like time?
Yeah, we had a couple conversations over the last few years. This is my 10th year at school now, and we had a couple conversations through the years. I certainly didn't know what the school would do whenever he stepped down. It wasn't a given that I would be the head coach. But we had a couple conversations, and one of the things I told him was, I don't want you ever to feel like you have to step down because I'm here. And I want you to go as long as you can. So I think for him, he just felt like it was probably time to step down and hand the program over. And, lucky for me, the school thought that I'd do a good enough job and just promoted me as the head coach. But it was a lot of challenges with taking over for my dad. Many of the listeners probably don't know who he is, but he was, my older brother Philip and me and my brother William, all my brothers. He was our coach growing up, and he's always been a high school coach. And so even from the time we were walking, we were going to his practices and his wrestling matches and tournaments, and he was always our personal coach. And then when we got to college, I remember him once telling me, he said, look, don't come looking for me for technique. You've got your own coaches now, Coach Barbie and Coach Henson and all those guys. And he said, they're your coaches now. So when I came back, he'd been here for so long, and he'd done such an incredible job. And obviously just one of my heroes. Is just real hard filling in those types of shoes, if you know what I mean. You can't fill his shoes in, but just do the best I can. It'd been a lot easier if you take over somebody that just ran a terrible program. There's no expectations. That'd be the easier thing to do. So it definitely challenging. And, but at the same time, I was able to take over a program that had been in good hands for a long time, and a lot of issues that maybe new coaches have, I didn't have.
Yeah. So sounds like based on the longevity of your dad's career, and obviously with generally how old you are, he probably started the youth program that you started in, it would be my assumption, or was a big part of that. Mm-hmm. Talk about, we heard from Philip and Willie, but talk about just growing up a part of a big family, getting involved in wrestling, and, what was kind of your perspective early on?
Well, I had 9 brothers and sisters, and there was 5 boys and 5 girls in the family. So I had 4 brothers, and growing up, I really didn't know any different. You just, you're pretty sheltered, and you don't know that, not every family out there has 10 kids. And, you come to realize that you're a pretty rare breed, but didn't know any different growing up. There was never a dull moment in the house. So I'm the second oldest. Philip's the oldest. Then it goes me, and then it goes William. So there were 3 boys back to back to back. And we played all the time. We were fighting all the time. Fighting all the time. Anything we did, we were incredibly competitive with each other. That's probably one thing that helped us out as we grew older and got more into wrestling, is just we competed at everything. We tried to play pickup basketball, and we were just horrible basketball players, but it always ended up in a wrestling match. We were always fouling each other. Just anything we did, we competed. But we grew up, and I think my dad, what I really appreciate now looking back on, he took us around everywhere. So when we were old enough to run around gymnasiums, I guess when we were maybe 6 or 7, we were traveling with him all the time. When he'd have a tournament on the weekend, we'd go with him. And so we were always traveling with my dad to his wrestling tournaments and matches. And, you know, all the kids that he was coaching, you know, in a certain way felt like our brothers, because we were with them all the time. And there was a period of time where we were homeschooled as well. And the high school my dad was coaching at was literally right across the street. And so, you know, for probably 4 or 5 years, my brother Philip and William and I, we all were all of his practices. So we felt like, you know, from the time we were 7 or 8 years old, we were a part of his high school wrestling program. So we were around my dad all the time at all of his wrestling practices and events. And that's kind of how we grew up. And, you know, we're just practice partners all the way through West Point, obviously.
So I remember a story. I don't remember all the details of it, but it was known as the Rudy Story. It was like, so for listeners out there, Simpson family is very, very Catholic, love Notre Dame. And I remember, how did the story go? Like, how old were you during the youth wrestling tournament? Somebody was getting beat. Was it you or was it Phil?
Yeah, it was me.
I remember always giggling at that, but that was always a funny story. Now I forget the details of it.
Yeah. It's kind of embarrassing. It's kind of an embarrassing story. So big Catholic family. And when the movie Rudy came out, I can't remember, it was like 94 or something like that. Or before then, I can't remember, 92 maybe. Whenever the movie Rudy came out, so they didn't have Netflix or anything like that. They had Blockbuster. I don't know if y'all remember Blockbuster.
Oh yeah.
That's where you would get your movies from.
Every kid's dream.
Every kid's dream. So we had a tournament coming up called the Southeast Regional Tournament. It was a big tournament. Of course, all the states in the Southeast are competing at it. And it was a freestyle. We were competing in the freestyle tournament. For some reason, I think my dad had another event and he couldn't travel with us to the Southeast Regional. It was the first time he'd never coached us. So we traveled with Team Tennessee and we went to the Southeast Regionals. I can't remember where it was, North Carolina or something. And so it was just me and Philip, and then these Team Tennessee guys, and one of my uncles was there coaching too. You remember Dang Whit Dunning? He was there with us, and so was his dad. But the tournament, there was mats everywhere. It felt like there were 30 mats, and it was just all over the place. So whatever it ended up, we're at the Southeast Regional Tournament, and me and Philip. Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. Before the Southeast Regional Tournament, Rudy was out at Blockbuster. Philip called Blockbuster. I'm not lying. Every day for a month straight. Is the movie Rudy in yet? No, they're all still checked out. Check again later. He'd call the next day. Do you have the movie Rudy yet? No, it's not in yet. Check again later. Luckily, like the day before we leave for the Southeast Regional Tournament, Blockbuster has the movie Rudy in. And so we go get the movie Rudy. We rent it and we watch it that night. And I mean, I'm a Catholic family with big Notre Dame fans. It's like the greatest movie we'd ever seen in our lives. It was everything we needed before we competed in the Southeast Regional Tournament. Just fired us up. You know, Rudy, you know, makes the team. He gets on the field. His family comes and sees him. It's a dream come true. And they've got this emotional music in the movie too. If any of you guys have seen the movie Rudy, you might know it. I'm not a great singer, but it's like da dun dun da dun dun da dun dun da 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 da, and that's like, you know, really emotional part of the movie for me. So we watched the movie the night before, and we're just so freaking fired up. I think we had like a 2-hour practice after the movie Rudy was done, me and Philip. So we travel to the Southeast Regional Tournament, and I get hooked up first round with, I don't know who the guy is, and there's no coaches around, and so Philip has to coach me. And I think I'm probably 10. And so he's maybe 11, or maybe I'm 9 and he's 10. We're really young. And then Philip has these huge buck teeth. He hadn't had braces yet. He's got these huge buck teeth. He looks like just a goober. We're from Tennessee. We have these crazy Southern accents. And so anyway, so this little bitty kid, Philip, is in my corner coaching me, and I'm just getting waxed. Whoever I'm wrestling, I don't know. I need to find the bracket, but I felt like I was probably.
Story only got to be 10% true. Let's just say it's David Taylor.
Yeah, I mean, it could have been a David Taylor guy. Like, I would love to see who it was. It was probably like Doug Schwab or something. You know, like I would. The guy was waxing me. And so back then, a tech used to be 15 points in freestyle. Now it's 10. I'm losing by 14 points. Like it's 14-0. We go out of bounds, and I'm walking back to the center, just feeling so sorry for myself. And Philip yells at me. The gym is really loud, and he's the only coach. So he yells, and it's like he hasn't hit puberty yet. So it's just really high, Southern pitched voice. And I'm just walking back to center in my head. I'm like, I'm just ready to get teched and get the match over with. He goes, Patrick! Patrick! And he's yelling at me. And I turn around like, leave me alone, Philip. I don't want to listen to you. And he's in the corner just fired up. And he goes, remember Rudy. Remember Rudy. Of course, we had just watched it the night before. And I'm not lying. That song jumps in my head. Dun, 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 dun. And I start strutting back to the center. And I'm like, yeah, Rudy, let's go. The guy shoots. I double underhook him. I whip him to his back, and I pin the guy. There's like 10 seconds left. It's the first round. Philip, Rudy. So anyway, I pinned the guy. There's like 10 seconds left. And I run back. I run over there. I jump in his arms. You know, we're doing the whole thing. So anyways, that was the first round. I went on to win the next 7 matches, and I won the tournament.
Dang.
That's some really stuff.
Doug Schwab come back and take third?
Yeah, I don't even know. I got to figure out who that guy was. He's probably like a legend or something. But he was killing me.
So here's the question then. What movie is better? Rudy?
Yeah.
Or Rocky IV?
Yeah, that's hard. That's hard.
It's tough.
Yeah, that's a tough one. It's like you're cutting weight. Do you want a cheeseburger or a slice of pizza? You know, both are awesome. You know, I don't know. Yeah, they're both good. I don't want to pick.
I won't make it.
Yeah.
Oh man, that was good. That was better than I remembered. I mean, I guess.
I mean, just imagine like a 10-year-old kid yelling at his little brother, pounding his heart, like Rudy. I can't. Those other people around the mat was probably like, who are these guys? But it worked. It worked in the moment.
Oh man.
So you talk about two brothers. I mean, man, it's like the sport of wrestling is so unique when you get a set of brothers or the relationship between dad and son.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that to me is what like embodies wrestling. So growing up, you got several brothers. Philip decides to go to West Point.
Yeah.
We heard from him on his decision of why, you know, he had multiple choices, and then Coach Barbie comes in the picture. He goes to West Point. What was the deciding factor in you going? I mean, I know from being a younger brother where my older brother's already there that there's maybe some pressure to go, but you're not fully decided. And that definitely weighs into the decision, but it's like, man, you got your own career you're managing at the same time. So for you, what was it that sold you and made you finally choose to go to West Point?
Yeah. So there were a couple things. The first, when it first came on my radar was when I was a freshman, and my dad sat, I think, me and Philip and William down and just said, look, you guys are going to go to college. And we're like, yeah, we know we're going to go to college. And he said, but you're going to pay for it all. And we're like, okay. So he said, so you're going to have to figure out how to do it. And wrestling's probably your best way to do it. So we had like a 30-minute conversation with my dad. I felt like it was probably a 30-minute conversation where he talked to us about college and how we could make it in college and getting our grades up. And then at the end, he mentioned, there's always military academies. They have wrestling programs. Maybe that would be an option. And he left it at that. And, we played Army in the woods growing up all the time. I was like, that might be kind of neat. I had my grandfather served in the military. So I always just very, very proud of my grandfathers. That meant a lot to me. Mm-hmm. So when I was a freshman, I started thinking about it. Not a lot, but I was thinking about it. And then when Philip went, I said, kind of came back in my mind. I said, I was just always so close with Philip. And we were inseparable growing up. As much as we fought, and we fought all the time, it was like I had a hard time not being around him. He was my best friend. And so when he went to West Point, to me, that was big. As I said, yeah, I'd really like to be with them still and continue being practice partners like we have been our entire life. But I wasn't, it wasn't like, yeah, I'm definitely going to West Point at that when I was a junior. A couple colleges were talking to me. I didn't have a lot of colleges talking to me. I talked to University of Virginia a little bit. I talked with UPenn a little bit. Roger Rana, who's the coach now, used to be the coach then. So I actually talked with him. But it wasn't really, it didn't seem that serious. And I explained to the coaches, I said, hey, I'm not going to be able to pay for it. I'm going to have to get as much money as I can, and I have to work job. We had that conversation. I feel like there wasn't a lot of traction with the other schools, but I tell you, probably the biggest factor was when September the 11th happened. So that was my senior year in high school. And I remember after that event, my mindset changed for going to school. That just became real serious. I felt like there was a bigger purpose in life than just, maybe wrestling. I said, okay. I mean, at that time, everybody was thinking worst case scenario, okay, yeah, we're probably going to war. I started thinking, what's that mean for Philip? And then I started thinking, number one, I always wanted to be with him and be his practice partner. But then if he were to go to war, would I be able to live with myself if I wasn't doing the same thing? I don't know, probably silly stuff looking back on it now, but I wanted to be in the fight too. And I think that was the big turning point for me, was September the 11th. And I started thinking about it really seriously. And then on my recruiting visit, probably like you two guys, you see the campus and you're just like, holy cow. I mean, this place is just, there's so many incredible things about West Point. The campus is beautiful. The people are incredible. They've got a good wrestling program. Their coach is awesome. And it just all made sense to me. So those are a couple of things that were going through my mind.
Well, on your
You mentioned
recruiting
playing
trip,
Army in the woods growing up. Just a random question. Did you ever play Navy?
Yeah, no, that was never me.
That's funny. Everyone says the same thing.
So Patrick, on your recruiting visit, do you remember who showed you around?
Yeah, mostly Philip. Yeah, I walked around with Philip a lot, and we had a couple older guys that he was kind of hanging out with, because he was a plebe at the time, so I stayed with him. I went to his classes, but then, during the downtime when we tried to go get a sandwich, I think we went together as a bigger group so that he wasn't getting locked up, in central area with me as a recruit. So the other wrestlers hung out with us too.
Because I wasn't sure, when he's a plebe,
Yeah.
I guess I'm forgetting, like, plebes normally didn't like host.
Right.
Host the recruits coming in just because that sense.
Yeah, it might have been a special circumstance just because he was my brother. Yeah, but I remember visiting, and I wish he didn't really explain to me like what you should or shouldn't do. I guess people probably would have known that I wasn't a West Pointer because I had longer hair. But I remember walking out of his room to go shower, like in the hallways, and all I had was the robe on. And I think I was barefoot. Like, I totally could have gotten yelled at by upperclassmen as a little bit.
His robe?
Yeah, I was wearing his robe. I was walking down the hallway, just strutting around, I was like, man, I totally could have gotten locked up. I wouldn't know what to do. But yeah, luckily it didn't happen.
So you get to West Point. We had Bean on here, Bernard Gardner, in an earlier episode. He talked a lot about the battles in the room and wrestling in Cullum Hall. And Sammy Henson. He mentioned you, a few times too.
Yeah.
Talk about some of those, battles. Bean was he was a wild man. I was a prep school coach, so we would wrestle a good bit. And I remember, I never wrestled with Sammy Henson, but I remember coming on my recruiting trip and being like, this guy is a maniac.
Yeah.
Talk to us a little bit about that, your plebe year, and kind of transitioning into college too.
So plebe year was hard for me. When I talk to kids about going to West Point, and we have usually seems like somebody every year from our school that wants to go there. I always give the example between Philip and I. Philip could care less if he got in trouble. He could care less if he, his shoes weren't shiny enough at inspection, or if he got, however many, negative marks during a Sammy inspection. Like, I never wanted to get in trouble. So I took things way too seriously. So plebe year was hard on me because I just put so much pressure on myself, and there's so many other things outside of wrestling. But it was also hard because Bean was in my weight class, and he was a competitor. And, he was the type of guy, he was like one of the first guys I ever wrestled that had what I call the high flyer moves. He could be down by 5 points and at any moment throw you to your back. Like, he just did crazy stuff when he wrestled. And I had never really wrestled anybody like that. Philip and I were pretty methodical with what we did. But like, his personality matched exactly the way he wrestled. I'm talking about Bernard Gardner, Bean. And so we had some really good scraps in the room. We had a bunch of challenge matches. I think we went back and forth, but it turned out at the end of the year when we did a best of 3 to see who was going to start and wrestle for the EIWAs, he beat me. And that was the first time in my whole life I had not been a starter and I was a backup. Like, I didn't even know what to do. I was just like, it was a pretty dark moment in my plebe career. But I learned a lot from wrestling Bean. Just the way he wrestled. I learned a lot about being a backup and how hard that is. And it's given me now as a coach a lot of appreciation for kids that don't start and are still coming in and competing really hard in the room. But we also had Sammy Henson, and holy cow, man, it was like, you want the worst timing to have to wrestle Sammy Henson. He had just won a silver medal at the 2000 Olympics, I think is what it was. Mm-hmm. And he had retired for 1 year and decided to come out of retirement. But the year he decided to come out of retirement was when he was at West Point. And so it wasn't like he was just working out to work out. Like, he was on a mission to get back to the shape he had been before. And so every day he would wrestle me, and he'd wrestle Bean, and he'd wrestle Tony Severo. And I think us 3 were probably the main guys because he was weighted about as much as we did. And he was the first guy that I'd ever wrestled. And of course, he's a coach, but there was no out of bounds. And so in Cullum Hall, the mats went right up to the wall, and it actually went right up to the stairs. And he would double leg you, and he would run you into the stairs, and your back, you would literally be laying on the stairs, and your back spine would be in the staircase. Doesn't feel very good. And I remember the first time he ran me into a wall, or ran me into, I can't remember, stairs or wall, and I tapped him on the back. I was like, all right, coach, out of bounds. And he's like, there ain't no out of bounds. And kept wrestling. I was like, what am I getting into now? And I was like, this guy's crazy. And so, kind of he taught me a lot. He taught me a lot, mostly mental. Technically, his technique was, he was short and stocky. I was more long and lanky, so it didn't really work for me. But I remember being in a wrestling matches when he was in my corner, and probably a big jump for me occurred when, I was winning like 4-2, and I'm riding a guy on top in his third period with like a minute left, and he tells me to cut the guy loose. And I'm like, cut him loose? If I cut him loose and he takes me down, he's winning the match. He's like, cut him loose. And I cut him loose. And I remember he almost broke me many times when he was in my corner because he would tell me to cut him loose and take the guy down again. But that was where I learned to just go for the kill and not try to hold on to win. And that was probably something I really needed at that point in my life as a wrestler, Mm-hmm. Cut him loose. I'm up by 2. And he's like, cut him loose. Now take him down again. I was like, frickin', hey, I just want to ride him out. I can ride him out. Coach, I can ride him out. Let me ride him out. He's like, you're going to let him up and you're going to take him down again. And you do that and you say, okay, he's not going to make me cut him up again. And of course, he yells from the corner, let him go again. So he was a hard coach. When you wrestled him, he was hard. And then when he was coaching, it was tough too.
Yeah. I feel like back then there weren't as many programs. Like now, like everybody's mantra is like, score as many points as possible, get on your offense. I feel like back then it was a lot more methodical in general across like the way college wrestling was. You wrestled
Yeah, a lot of 3-2, 4-3 matches. Yeah.
So kind of progressing into later in your career, you progressed each year. You got better, from your Yuk year and then your Cow year, but you're kind of always in the shadows of Phil. Talk about that and how that weighed on you, kind of like mentally, emotionally. Were you ever like trying to live up to his expectations, or talk to us a little bit about that, and then kind of throughout before your first year.
Yeah, so this is something I haven't talked a lot about before, but in the last several years, I've talked about it a little bit more. It's taken me a long time to process my wrestling career. Never ended the way I wanted it to, as probably everybody would say, but there were times in my wrestling career where I just didn't like wrestling. And, and then as you try to grow as a wrestler, and you want to get better and better, then you take a dip and you keep getting better. I had a couple of moments in my career where there were like a year-long period where I just didn't get any better because I didn't enjoy it. So Jordan, I don't know if this applied to you or not. Maybe you and your brother have a different dynamic, but there was a lot of pressure I'd never realized I had on me with my older brother, Philip, being so good. And it wasn't anything he ever did. Like, it wasn't anything he ever said to me. He was just really good. And, you probably put a lot of pressure on myself that I didn't need to. He'd go out and he'd pin everybody, and I'd go out and maybe I'd win by 11, but I didn't pin him, so I think that weighed on me a lot. I had a really good high school coach. He was one of my assistant coaches, and he talked to me a little bit about it, when I was in high school. And I said, Coach, I don't think that's much of an issue. But, I look back on it now and I think it was. He was so good. And instead of focusing on myself and who I am and the type of wrestler that I was, I think I did compare myself to him a lot. And when you're comparing yourself to a guy that's Philip's caliber, obviously, I think most people here should know his credentials. It's like, you're not going to compare to a guy like that, and you can just do the best that you can do. But that was something that weighed on me a lot. I'd never realized until after the fact. Yeah.
Do you think there were positives to that? Like, do you think it helped you progress, at certain points of your career too, trying to like live up to that? Like, there's a lot of like brother duos, and like, when you're part of a team that maybe is better around individuals, like you rise to that occasion. Do you think like, it helped you in a sense of that too, like progressing, like having him too?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we were practice partners our whole life. And even when we got to West Point, it was like, there were so many other good kids in the room you could practice with, but I think he just wanted to practice with me. I just wanted to practice with him because we knew each other really well. And, and he always wanted to help me. We always cut weight together. We were always like the same amount over. It was really freaky. It was like, after practice the day before a weigh, before a match, it's like, I'm 5 over. All right, I'm 5 over too. Let's go run. So it's just, so we kind of did everything together. And I honestly, I just really appreciate him in all the ways that he was a good leader for me and a great mentor. Obviously my brother, but I've seen him as a big mentor for me as well. And any pressure that I had because he was my older brother and all the successes that he had was only put on me because of probably myself. But yeah, I mean, if you get to be a practice partner with Philip, you're going to end up getting better and progressing. No doubt about it. But I'll tell you this funny story. Hardly anybody knows this, but except for Coach Barbie and Coach Maldonado. So when I was a junior, I did not qualify for the NCAAs. I beat Jordan Lean in the quarterfinals, I think, of the EIWAs. And then I lost my next match to some guy that hit a fireman's carry on me, and I couldn't make my way back after that. So I ended up getting 6th place. I was like, I definitely should be going NCAAs, but I found myself at 6th place. And I didn't get a wild card. I was so mad. And it was probably at the end, of course, Philip qualified for NCAAs. So at NCAAs, we're always doing our spring break trip. And he was the only one that year, I think, that qualified. Actually, Luke Calvert qualified, I believe, as well. but Philip and I were practice partners over spring break. So it was just me and Philip, Coach Barbie, and Coach Maldonado. And at this point, I've gone a couple weeks after the EIWAs, like, I don't know, 10 days or 2 weeks, whatever it is. And I'm putting some weight on. So I weigh about as much as Philip does. And I'm just still, ticked off about not making the NCAAs. And so I'm drilling with him, and he's all prima donna, you're not reacting right to me. And you got to give me this feel when I'm drilling. And I just, in our, whatever practice it was, like the day before we're leaving for NCAAs or 2 days before. So I'm just getting back to, Philip being my older brother and having success. I think I let it out all at the wrong time. The drilling just got dirtier and dirtier. Like moves that aren't legal, fish hooks, like deep butt drags, like not a hand butt drag, like you're sticking a finger up the backside, like I don't know if y'all done that.
That's a visual from Jordan there.
Jordan, I bet you've done it to your brother once or twice.
And I was on the receiving end.
Okay, receiving it. Yeah, me too.
I'm not into that kind of thing,
So Philip was getting mad at me because I wasn't drilling the right way or giving the right looks. And I'm just mad at him just because I'm mad at him. Because he's complaining and I didn't make NCAAs. So whatever it was, I'm supposed to shoot. He defends. He goes around and gets his 2 takedown. We're supposed to drill. Well, he goes deep butt drag with one finger. And I said, that is not happening. And probably all the frustrations I had about him being my brother and making it to NCAAs, and I didn't, came out in the very next go. I said, I'm not going to let him take me down, even if we're drilling. And he tried to shoot, and I pulled him up, and Coach Barbie and Maldonado were there watching, and I body locked him. And I slammed him on the mat. And I probably didn't realize how strong I was compared to him because I was not cutting weight and he was. So I had never really been his weight. I didn't mean to slam him as hard as I did, but I lifted him up and planted him in the mat. And Coach Barbie ran across the room yelling, "What are you doing?" And I was like, I don't even know what I just did. I just know I'm mad at Philip. And it was like, he could have gotten hurt like the day before going to NCAAs. And I'm a little still embarrassed about it, but whatever it was, I let my emotions get the best of me. And I just DDT'd him. But it was like, here I am, big boy. Don't ever butt drag me like that again. So he never did.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that because I've had this guilt on me for like 10 years now because the same exact thing happened with me and Casey the week of NCAAs.
No way.
100%. Only people there getting this huge thing. He gave me a deep butt drag.
Yeah.
I freaked out. I don't know what I did. And I end up finishing the practice with Colonel Arredondo doing just whatever that's called. I don't even remember. It's just some weird Greco pummeling with him trying to cut weight in case he drove Heskett. And I feel bad because it's supposed to be a good moment and a good memory, and it wasn't. But
yeah, well, that makes me feel so much better, Jordan. I appreciate you sharing
we can
that.
Connect on that. That's good.
Yeah. Yeah. And
All
needless to say, practice ended after that, and we got separated. Yeah.
I can relate. So let's fast forward to your first year. Your team captain had a lot of good success. B-Rose got in here. How much of that success would be attributed to your scrappy plebe practice partner? I'm assuming that's him.
Yeah, he was. So that was definitely my best year. Part of it was a lot like my senior year in high school. That was definitely my best year in high school. I think some of it was feeling like I was the man and Philip wasn't around. At least in high school, that's what it was. And then in college, I really opened up a lot as far as wrestling goes. I wasn't just trying to hold on for a win. I was trying to, instead of beat guys by 2, I was trying to beat them by 6 or 7. But also my practice partner. So I wrestled Brian. And so I don't want this story to be very long, but there was a guy named Matt Dragon. Okay. He taught me like a revolutionary technique because he hit it on me a couple times. Brian also taught me some revolutionary technique that us Tennessee boys never saw. Like, I feel like it's the way of technique that things usually start up in Pennsylvania And then after a couple of years, like PA guys doing it, somehow it makes its way down to Tennessee. At least that's how it used to be before Flow Wrestling and all these videos where you can watch everybody. Like technique would make its way down over a couple of years. Okay, so whatever, Brian, I'd get Brian's leg up in the air and he'd do the dive under the legs, roll under. You know what I mean? Or you're in on a shot and you knock him on his hip and he does the leg roll under. Like he was always doing that to me. And I used to get so mad at him.
So I had,
When we go live, I couldn't stop it. So I'd be like, this chump, I'm wrestling here. Like I get on his legs all the time and then he does a leg roll under. I had to figure out how to stop it. But I had never, you'd probably been doing it for a couple of years. I don't know, but I had never really seen it. But yeah, I wrestled Brian a lot. Had a lot of fun. Brian, I never told you this, but I always incredibly proud of your freshman year. Yeah, he was ended up becoming a starter for us and really was awesome wrestler. And a lot better than I thought you were going to be when I met you at the prep school. He had his greasy, spiked up hair, like he was a Jersey guy, and turns out he ended up being okay. Yeah, turns out he ended up being pretty good.
Appreciate the kind words, Patty.
Yeah, but I also wrestled a lot with John Anderson, and I know you've interviewed John already, and if anybody knows John, he's just Mr. Intensity. And I think through that year, definitely wrestling Brian, having to learn how to funk. I learned a lot of learning how to stop funk by wrestling Brian, but also just with John, enjoying, like getting to the point of exhaustion and actually enjoying that moment. Like I'd never really done that, but with John Anderson, I felt like that year, I felt like our whole team adopted that personality. What do you think, Brian? Like there was this sense that we enjoyed running the stairs, you know, like getting tired and finding a way to push through. And I mean, I don't know. That's what I felt like.
I think it was just you and John. I remember Chuck having a conversation with us, like, and being like, guys, you see what John does? You guys could do that too. And we're like, and I'm thinking to myself, no, I can't.
Yeah.
But I remember one practice vividly, because you guys would go so hard. Like,
Yeah.
I remember one practice so vividly where Chuck put like it was like a really hard drill, and like Chuck just put on the clock. And I remember thinking, okay, like there's like time wise, there's probably like 15 minutes left in practice. And like, it was a hard go. And so I was like, okay, I can do this for 15 minutes. Fast forward like 50 minutes later, it's like still going on. And I'm like so mad at you because you're going so hard. Like everybody else kind of like, okay, this is like, you know, this is not just like a hard drill. You go for like, go for 5, 10, 15 minutes. Like this is like an hour long.
Mm-hmm.
But you treated it like it was like going to be a 5-minute go. Like it was like it was a 60-minute AMRAP that you treated like a 5-minute AMRAP the entire time. That's a little CrossFit talk right there. But yeah, I was always so impressed by, John Anderson got a lot of, he's like the famous guy of like bringing on the smokes.
Yeah.
People don't know how you had it as well. You could give John a run for his money.
Yeah, that was probably one of the biggest reasons I made a little bit of a jump, was just enjoying moments where you're really exhausted and appreciating that, and feeling alive and knowing that in those moments, that's when you're really going to get better. I don't know, that year I just learned to appreciate those times, and it's probably hard for a freshman to come in and understand that.
I feel like you may have had it a little bit earlier too. I remember Phil telling a story when he was like a firstie, like practice was supposed to be over, and like they were like, hey, we're doing, Maldonado was like, we're doing more sprints, and like everybody else was like naturally just like, oh my God, we're done. And like John, we're like, yeah, all right, we get more.
Yeah.
So I think you may have had it a little bit earlier.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. I also think one of the things I did my senior year that I wish I would have done my whole life. I was always like a name follower. Like I loved, and I know you're like this, Brian, like, who everybody is, like if there's a guy from Pennsylvania that was 7th in the state last year, you know who he is. Like, so when I would wrestle in college, I knew everybody's name. And then I would look at the brackets and I'd say, oh, this guy's from this school. I've heard about him. And then by the time you wrestle, you've thought way too much about that guy. So my senior year, I just stopped looking at brackets. And the only time I would know who I had is when they would say in the hole, mat 3, Simpson versus whoever. And that would be like the first time I would know who I was wrestling. And then sometimes, like, one of my coaches, or I think even you, sometimes be like, hey, you want me to tell you who you have next? And I'd be like, don't tell me. Please don't tell me. I don't want to know. So I ended up wrestling a couple guys that I didn't realize who they were. They were pretty good. I thought they were pretty good. And then I learned after the fact that they were actually okay. And I realized, like Jeff Jaggers, I wrestled Jeff Jaggers, and I ended up beating him like 3-2. I think, I can't remember what the final score was. It was the Oklahoma SUNY Brockport tournament. And I remember I think you came up to me afterwards and like, man, do you know who that guy is? I was like, I don't know, some guy from Ohio State. I don't know who he is. You're like, that's Jeff Jaggers. And I was like, all right. So, but then obviously you realize, well, okay, man, I guess maybe I should just never know who I'm wrestling. I gave guys too much respect, obviously. And then that's one of the things I learned.
I remember that happened when you wrestled Esposito. I remember the first period, you came out there all timid, because I was all pumped. I was like, dude,
Yeah.
I was like, Patrick, he's going to come out. This guy beat Phil last year and he knows how to wrestle him. And he went there kind of like timid. And then like in the third, you started getting on your groove. You took him down like 2 or 3 times. John Smith gets up and he's like, he's taking you down, letting you up.
Yeah. And then I tried a lateral drop, bad move, landed on my back at the end of the match. Brutal in front of the Ohio State fans. Yeah. So senior, and I think honestly too, just being in a leadership position sometimes brings a little bit more out in you. I don't know if you've ever experienced that, where you feel like you're looking after other people more than just yourself, and probably broadening your sense of what's going on around me and who I need to care for, and it's more about the team than just me. I think sometimes elevates your level to to do a little bit better, and that probably was the case for me too. Yeah.
So I want to spend a good bit of time, because we haven't talked about it much. We've talked about it a little bit on a couple episodes, but your classmate Anthony, Severo, Tony Severo, was killed by a drunk driver early on, first year. We left for Thanksgiving. He drove home, my classmate Dan Guy, but then came home and shortly after got hit in a head-on collision and pretty much died instantly. Talk to us a little bit about your relationship with Tony, the type of guy he was, as your classmate. He already branched. Chemical was getting ready to, be the prep school coach after that.
Mm-hmm.
Talk to us a little bit about Tony, because a lot of, this was like before the internet. So there's a lot of listeners probably don't know anything about this whole story other than maybe like a snippet or a tidbit or a sentence or two. So talk to us a little about him. I didn't even know him very well.
Yeah, so Tony Severo was in my class. He had been class of 2006, and he was always for our senior year, he was 141 pounds. And so my senior year, he wasn't my practice partner much, but earlier on in our careers, he was my practice partner. When coaches wanted to split Philip and I up, we would drill or we would do some live goes. And to be honest, we didn't hang out a lot, Tony and I. He was a pretty quiet guy. He, unless he was around his, in a smaller group around his closest friends. But we would, hang out after practices and chat for a little bit. And then he'd go on to the dining hall and the mess hall and get his dinner. And I'd go my way, and I'd probably eat with Philip and John Anderson and Luke Calvert, Tommy Hendricks, a couple other guys. And so we were kind of do our own thing and didn't really hang out a lot on the weekends. But so our senior year, but we always had a good appreciation for each other, because we were around the same weight and we always scrapped really hard. It's one thing I remember about him, like he never stopped wrestling. You feel like you're going to take him down and he'd keep wrestling. He's like, I'm going to have to really secure this takedown before I jump up and try to do a move on top, because otherwise he's going to keep moving. And then our senior year, he was our starting 141 pounder. I was our starting 149 pounder. And then we broke for Thanksgiving break. I think we might have had 2 days off. He went home. I flew home to Nashville, and I was in Nashville. I think I was going to be flying back to West Point early the next morning. And it was that evening that I got a call from Coach Barbie and said, you know, kind of one of those moments where you listen to your coach and he chokes up a little bit and you just say, golly, my, you know, college coach, Coach Barbie didn't show a lot of emotion, but you could tell he was just really torn. And so what I ended up having to do that night is start a phone tree. So this is before, you know, you have text message, but it's before like all the big group text messages or Snapchat or Twitter or anything like that. So really the only way to get everybody to know about what happened is just to call somebody. And so I called some of the seniors and we assigned, hey, you need to call these guys, you call these guys. And so I can't remember, we had 45 or 50 guys in the team. And so I called the seniors and told them all what happened. And then we all just split up everybody else. And so over that whole night, it was probably Thursday night, maybe, I can't remember. We got a hold of the entire team. And then when we got back, you know, I know the wrestling team just recently with CJ Morgan experienced something like this, just a tragic event that just comes out of nowhere. And you don't really know what to do as a team captain. I was looking around, you know, I'm trying to process what happened. You know, this guy I was really close to, my practice partner for many years. Like, I don't even know how to, you know, emotionally what's going on. And then you got to tell the whole team. And then you're doing the funeral and the visitation, you're doing all that. For me, that was like, you know, I had some people looking to me, especially underclassmen, like, what do we do as a team? You know, so that was challenging. That was challenging for me to process it personally and then to help the team process it as well. Of course, you have all kinds of help, you know, a lot of good leaders at West Point, but that was really, really challenging. And I think that weighed heavy on us for probably the next couple of weeks. We weren't back to where we probably should have been as wrestlers and as a team, obviously just torn up from what happened. You know, but over the year, I think we ended up using something for good. You know, we ended up putting something on our singlets. Just we put TS right here on where over our hearts were, his initials, and we wrestled with that on our singlets all year long. And just I think it really drove some of our guys to perform better than they would have. You know, it really rallied us all. One of the things that rallied us all together that year. So just personally, you know, with Tony Severo, again, like I said, he was really quiet. And just for me, I always tried to tell myself I was going to be an All-American. That was my goal since I was a kid. I want to go to the Olympics. I want to be an All-American. And so like I had NCAA All-American written everywhere. So on my mirror in my bedroom in the barracks, I had it up on the mirror. On my computer, I had it written up on my computer. By my lamp next to my bed, I had it next to my lamp. So I did all these things to try to convince myself that I was going to be an All-American. Again, that's what, you know, you should do, I think, to convince yourself and to believe in yourself. But there was always something in me, just as probably one of my weaknesses. As much as I told myself I could be an All-American, I don't know if I ever really believed I could be an All-American. But whatever it was right before we left for Thanksgiving break. And I had a practice where it was just Tony and I that wrestled live. I think we were partners and we wrestled live for 30 minutes or something. And it was after that practice, we're kind of sitting around and stretching out. And he said, in like the most real conversation I'd ever had with him, he just says, you know, and all the other times we talked, it was just joking. He said, Patrick, you're a heck of a wrestler. And I kind of at first thought, you know, hey, thanks, Tony, you know, that he's going to say something silly. And he just looked at me and he said, no, I'm serious. You've come a long way and you're an incredible wrestler. And just him saying that, I was like, meant a lot to me. And then he said, I know your goal is to be an All-American, and I 100% believe you're going to be an All-American this year. And I'm like, more than anybody else ever telling me I could accomplish my goals, him saying that to me went further than what anyone else could have done for me. Just because my relationship with him was never really serious. We always joked with each other, and obviously we were competitive. I wanted to beat him. He wanted to beat me. But when he told me that, and he looked at me in the eye and told me that, at that moment, I 100% believed I could be an All-American. He's just an incredibly genuine person. He always looked out for other people. Especially people from his area. We had a lot of Pennsylvania boys on the team. We always try to look out for those kids. And I don't know, just a real special guy. And I'll always remember that moment with him. It was probably mid-November when we wrestled and had that conversation, and he had that serious conversation with me. And I just said, "Tony, you don't know how much that means to me. Thank you very much." And, he gave me a hug. I gave him a hug, and we went off to dinner after that. And he went, and had dinner with his buddies, and I went and had dinner, with my group of people. But, it's one of those moments in life where you say, I don't want to take anybody in my life for granted, because at any moment they could be taken away, and I think those moments happen in your life, obviously when you don't know what's going to happen, but it always seems to bring you back to thinking, I should appreciate everything I have right now, because it might not be here tomorrow. And I remember talking like that with all of our classmates, the seniors, and saying, I can't believe he's gone. I wish we'd have had another day with him. But all the seniors got together and said, look, we need to honor him and do the best we can this season. And so that's what we did. And we decided to put the patches over our hearts that year and wrestled like that. And we had a phenomenal season. We really had a good season. I don't know if you remember it, Brian, but we had a ton of people placed at the EIWAs, more than they had in a long time.
Yeah, we had Ryan placed in the top 6.
Yeah. And we ended up with 4 qualifiers and a couple other people that, including, I think, you, that were just outside of the wild card selection. So, yeah. It
was a good tournament. A lot of good memories.
Yeah.
Well, tough to transition from that, but appreciate you sharing. And I just remember even my plebe year, Tony's legacy was still living on as we were going to the 5K and all that. So that was, that was several years later. That was 5 years later, and it was still going on. So I know that he's never forgotten, and obviously his family's still involved in the program to some degree. So
that's right. Yeah. And I hope he's never forgotten for several reasons. Number one, he's just such a big part of Army wrestling at that time. In 2002 to 2006, he was, several year starter. He was a beast and did a lot for the program, but also just, the idea of, drinking and driving and that message, like,
yep.
That's an important message to get across to a lot of young people. You can't play around with that stuff. And honestly, as a coach now, I talk a lot of times to our wrestlers about stuff like that. And I talk about what it meant to me when he knew my goals. He went out of his way to ask me and remember what my goals were, and then to encourage me. I said that really meant a lot to me. So I talk to the team about Tony probably a couple times a year, to my high school team, a couple times a year. So he's somebody I think I hope is remembered forever. I certainly will remember him forever.
That's awesome. So wanted to transition out of your wrestling career and talk, close on time now, but want to talk about post West Point some. B-Row's got an interesting fact in here that you, Phil, and Willie all met your wives at each other's weddings, and it was pretty much a fairy tale ending. Is that true, or is that just B-Row being a hopeless romantic?
No, it's true. Yeah, so we're a big Catholic family, and then there's this other big Catholic family in Ohio. And Philip was dating a girl within this family. Now they're all cousins. They're not sisters. So I think there's a movie called Seven Brides and Seven Brothers or something like that. There's an old movie. It's not quite like that, but so Philip was dating this girl, and then William met his now wife at a wedding, and at one of the family weddings. And then when Philip was getting married to that girl, it was in Nashville. And then I saw, who is now my wife, I saw her at the wedding at the very end of the night. Like everybody was leaving. And I was like, holy cow, how did I would have gone and talked to that girl if I'd have seen her. She was like 100 yards away, walking out the door. And I just kept my fingers crossed. I said, William's getting married in 2 weeks. If she is a part of that family, she'll be at the wedding too. So she was. 2 weeks later, she's one of their cousins. She was at the wedding 2 weeks later, and I met her, and then the rest is history. So Philip's wife, my wife, and William's wife are all cousins with each other.
So I want to hear a little more details on this. So like, how did you approach her at the wedding? Like, so what was there, did you just introduce yourself, or like, did you put the word in with one of the other cousins? Like, hey, I'm interested. I want to hear how this went down initially.
Yeah.
Just Rudy, and he went running over there.
Yeah. Hey, there you go. Yeah. Yeah. Philip needed to do a little bit of, Rudy for me to get me motivated. No, as I've always been with girls, I was just so awkward. It was brutal. But I met her the night before. They had a big gathering of their family, and then and then me and my brothers, and somebody was playing guitar, and it was like a big campfire, and everybody was playing guitar and singing. And I play a little guitar and I sang. I'm not great, but I said, hey, now's my chance. So I grabbed that guitar. I said, all right, I'm next. I grabbed that guitar and I went to my go-to. I played, it's a 3-chord song, G, C, D. I played Leaving on a Jet Plane. And it was phenomenal. Yeah, played my heart out. That was it. Yeah, I scooped up the guitar and played the best song I knew. And I think it worked.
I'd say it did.
Yeah. So we met each other that night, and then I asked her to dance the next day. And I've always been awkward with girls, so luckily it ended up working out for me.
Well, that's good. So I want to, we have been going on for a while. I want the listener, this is going to be like a 4-hour episode. But there are some important things, I want to talk, get into like your coaching now. We talked a few months ago, kind of about the coaching strategies and things you do different. When I consulted Phil and Will about this too, they piped in with some other questions. And so like, what are some of the, if you could talk to yourself now, like going back to your first year, or go back to wrestling, like coaching now for the last 10 years and processing your career, kind of like, what are some things you would tell yourself, back then, that maybe some of our listeners, we have current cadets, recruits, what are some of the things you tell yourself, to go about wrestling maybe a little bit different?
So number one is there's no need to put extra pressure on yourself. I lived a whole wrestling career of putting a lot of pressure on myself, and I was way too mad when I lost. I was way too mad when I got taken down. And just the idea of enjoying the process, I think a lot of people say it now, but enjoying the process is, like becoming a student of the game, like getting in the practice room and learning where I'm not very good and figuring out how to get better and experiment. Like when I wrestled you, I never wanted to get taken down. Like if I'd have gotten taken down by you, it was like the worst day. And so probably when I wrestled you, Brian, like there were things I could have been working on, but I didn't do it. And I only stuck to what I was good at because I just didn't want to get scored on by BHAW. And so, like that type of an attitude, you can be good in wrestling, but you can be better if you don't wrestle like that. So, no need to put a lot of pressure on yourself. Have better perspective on wrestling and what you're doing. It's not the end of the world. And for me, I think I made it so much of my life. Like wrestling was way too important. I mean, it was one of the most important things in my life. But I got way too down when I lost or when I got taken down and when things didn't go my way. And I think just having a much more grateful attitude for the things that were in my life that I was experiencing and enjoying wrestling a lot more would have helped me a tremendous amount. So when I coach, wrestling's a hard sport. There's no way around it. Like it's going to be hard. You don't have to make it any harder by yelling at a guy because he got taken down or by getting upset with yourself because you got taken down too much. Obviously competitive people are going to be upset when they lose, but you got to be able to get over it. So what I try to tell our guys is, look, don't think about getting taken down. Don't think about losing. The focus should just be on, okay, number one, tomorrow you might not have a chance to compete ever again. Right. And so just enjoy the ability to come out here and compete and wrestle. Like that should be first and foremost. Enjoy the teammates that you have, enjoy the relationships that you have and your family and all that you have. And then, then just give it everything you got. And that's all you can ask. So I felt like much of my career, I ended up wrestling with too much pressure, and I wish I wouldn't have done that, if that makes sense. Yeah. And I see it in wrestlers a lot now, and I try to talk them through that. And so much of it is just about perspective. When wrestling becomes your life and then it doesn't go well, your life seems like it crashes. It shouldn't be like that.
Yeah. I remember, you spoke a lot about that a couple months back when we talked. I know
Yeah.
you really respect the way Cale, runs things at Penn State. And this is not a Penn State podcast, but
Yeah.
this is a podcast that's the favorite, it's a fan of success. And Penn State's had a lot of it. What are some of the things you've learned from that and like adopted into your program and, think maybe, will be successful in others? I know a lot of, now that a lot of Penn State wrestlers are out coaching in other places, it's kind of gotten out how they go about things, and a lot of colleges have adapted, and not just Penn State, but just,
Sure. Yeah.
they started at. Talk to us a little bit about that and kind of like your take on it.
Yeah. So first off, I think wrestling's moving in the right direction. I think there's a lot of really good men. I think there's a lot of really good examples out there for kids to look up to, like college wrestlers and Olympic wrestlers that are just really good people and have great perspective on life. I think the wrestling's moving in a really good direction as far as that goes. And so, when I grew up, Iowa was the best team. And so generally what happens is whoever the best is at the sport, you just look at what they're doing and you try to emulate it. But back in the day, Iowa was just beat on each other, beat your opponent into submission. And not everybody can be like that. Like that hurts. Like you can get injured really easily by just trying to hurt other people, and so, but now you look at it and, you mentioned this earlier in the podcast, it's just a lot more people are just trying to score more points. If you get taken down, well, get up and get your own takedown. And so I've been able to go to a couple Penn State camps. I've taken our team down to some satellite camps in Georgia for several years. And so I like to pick the brain of, I don't really talk a lot to Cale when I've done that. He's more quiet. He's actually got an incredible sense of humor. I've talked a little bit more to Casey Cunningham and to some of their wrestlers about what they do. And I think, and I certainly am not speaking on behalf of the Penn State program, but what I've understand from talking to them and listening to interviews is like the foundation of their program is like centered on an attitude of gratitude and just being grateful. And so, in my younger years, like as a wrestler, in my younger years as a coach, I focus way too much, like all of my focus goes to, did he finish his move? And there's other things you should be looking at other than that. Like number one, how was his effort? Like, was the effort good? Good. If he got scored on, no big deal. He'll fix it. So is the effort good? And then how's his attitude? Those are the types of things that, just I've changed a little bit that I've heard, what, some of those guys are doing. More and more people talk like that now. More and more people talk about being grateful for their teammates and their coaches and the opportunity to wrestle. And I think that's just a wonderful perspective to have. That from my point of view, I think that's what Penn State's program is founded on, is having a attitude of gratitude for what they have. And then everything else can stem from that. Good effort, appreciating what you have, and they're obviously really good wrestlers.
They've got something figured out.
Yeah, they do. Yeah.
Well, it's evident that you're passionate about what you're doing now and coaching, and the best coaches aren't the best coaches are the ones that learn from their career. And so clearly you've done that. Appreciate you sharing everything. last question for you. Who would be the top 3 folks that haven't been on that you would want to come on to BHAW Radio in the future?
That's a really good question. Some of the guys I would mention, you've already interviewed, actually. You guys did Justin Gorkowski, right?
No,
You didn't do Justin Gorkowski?
I don't even know who that is.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So I do have 3 now. So he was the team captain my plebe year. His name was Justin Gorkowski. He had a knee injury he had to fight through. But he was a real tough wrestler. I think he was 184. But he was also in my plebe year company. And I learned a lot of great leadership examples from him. Like, he was just hard-nosed, really tough, fought through an injury, had like no excuses. And there was a couple times where I got in trouble. And it used to be if you were going to give walking hours, there was like a hard sheet you signed. Like, I remember him walking into somebody's room that gave me walking hours. He picked the sheet up off the dude's table and just ripped it up right in front of the dude.
So that's why you never walked hours. I was wondering how you got away with never walking hours.
Yeah, my plebe year, I was supposed to have walked a couple hours. He ripped them up every time. So I was like, holy cow, this dude's a badass. I want to be just like him. So he just, he really looked out for me. He was a guy that wasn't an NCAA qualifier. He obviously wasn't an All-American, but he ended up going into the Army and doing a lot of really good things. I think he actually ended up writing a lot of articles for the Army on strategy. But Justin Gorkowski, he would have been class of 2000 and what would that have been? 2003. And then Coach Papalizio. I don't know if you're doing coaches as well, but Pat Papalizio, who's now at North Carolina State, was one of my assistant coaches. And I just remember him being such a goober of a coach. He was like the funny coach. You got like the really hardcore coach that never jokes around. But then you had Coach Pat Papalizio, and he was always just cracking jokes. And I remember thinking, he took over Binghamton. And I was like, just from what I remembered, I was like, I don't know if he'll ever be a good head coach. Like, he's a total goober. Look at him now. He's phenomenal. He's got one of the best programs in the whole country. And it looks like it's going to be sustainable because they've been that way for like 5 years at North Carolina State. So he was only at West Point for a year, but I think that'd be an interesting perspective. His journey, obviously coaching at West Point and then going on to be an incredible coach, and maybe what he learned from West Point, if he learned anything. But I'd love to hear his story because he probably thought we were crazy. and then there was a guy in my class who I don't think you've interviewed yet. He was a good friend of mine. His name is Tommy Hendricks.
Yeah, Tommy's. Tommy's like super involved in the program now.
Yeah, so I was just going to say. So when I was there, he was from Cornwall. And when I got there as a plebe, his family became like my second family, me and Philip's second family. They used to have us over for dinner, and they were like straight up New York. When they said coffee, it was coffee. There was a W in it every time. It was like, you want some coffee? So he taught me like these northern things, like how to pour your creamer in your coffee first and then pour your coffee in, so you don't have to use a spoon to stir it. I mean, all these incredible things, But he was right down the road in Cornwall, and his family took good care of us. And he was never started. He started for us a couple matches. He went to some tournaments, but he was never like the starter. And like I said earlier, I've come to have an incredible appreciation for people that are in the backup role and bust their tails every day. And he was a guy that came in and busted his tail every day. And like for me, the little moment in my career, my freshman year, when Bean beat me out, like I felt like my world was collapsing. But, he lived that his whole college career at West Point, and I just incredible admiration for somebody like him. He went on to do incredible things in the Army. He was in special forces, got all these other top secret stuff probably that nobody else knows that he did. But I know he's back. He's been involved in the program as well. So he probably would have good perspective about the program back then, what it's like now, because he's around it a lot. So he'd be somebody interesting to hear from too.
Yeah, and a little shout out. He runs a company called Decisive Point, who's hosting a tailgate this Saturday at the Army Navy game. So,
Oh, how about
if you're looking
that?
at this and you're going to the Army Navy game, you need to click on the link in the profile on Instagram or Facebook and sign up for the tailgate. This wasn't even planned either, and this is just like a nice little segue. But funny Tommy Hendricks story, real quick. We talked about butt drags earlier. One time I butt dragged him. I learned a lesson. He says, "You do that one more time, I'm going to punch you in the face." And I'm a little snot-nosed plebe. I did it again. He punched me in the face. And never did it again. Lesson to be learned there.
Yep. That's good. Yeah. So I think those three. I mean, Justin Gorkowski was a phenomenal leader. I really looked up to him. I remember him to this day as somebody that just always tried to take care of me, and he didn't have to. And Pat Pabalizio and Tommy Hendricks.
Awesome. That's a solid three right there.
Good list.
We've done 66 of these now, so now it gets harder for all the guests to pick like three people we haven't had on. I can imagine a year from now when we're like over 100 episodes or something. Like, who are we going to get on? Somebody's going to finally mention me. No, somebody mentioned it last week. It was actually, I was like, whoa, somebody recommended me.
Yeah, there you go.
But
with Brian Rowan right here, honestly, his freshman year, he was so full of himself. He almost had me convinced he was going to quit wrestling for soccer. I think it was in the fall time. We were down at the lower beaches, you know what I mean, down by the river.
Mm-hmm.
And we were playing our football league, fall football league. And
NFL.
Yeah, right. Actually, at that day, we were just kicking around the soccer ball. I think you had a soccer ball. I went down and we were kicking around. And I remember you saying, I think you were just full of yourself. Yeah, I'm a pretty good soccer player. And I could tell you probably knew a little bit what you were doing. You're like, I'm actually considering playing soccer for West Point. And I just remember thinking, are you crazy? But you were serious at the time. Luckily, you didn't try.
Yeah,
get wrestling.
We'll save that story for my show whenever it comes. I did have soccer aspirations at West Point at one time.
Yeah.
But appreciate you coming on the show, Patrick. This was
So hey, so you have some recruits that might listen to this, right?
Yeah.
I just want to say this really quickly. All right. Sometimes people ask me, would you do West Point again? 100% I would do West Point again. And I'll tell you, you get perspective on it after you leave West Point. But when I was at West Point, I didn't appreciate the amount of incredible leaders that are there. It's just an incredible leader pool. And I could go down the list. I had this guy named Major Ruth that was my psychology teacher. He ended up going, and I think he became the commandant of the prep school for a couple of years, but I'm sure he's a general now. Incredible. I had, Colonel Arredondo, Colonel Palka. The list goes on. And there's so many things that I learned from just leaders at West Point that I've tried to take with me to this day. And a lot of kids don't get those opportunities. If they go to any other school, maybe they'll run into one or two good leaders throughout their 4 years, 5 years in college, but on a daily basis, and you guys might attest to this, like literally you're coming in contact with some of the best leaders in the entire country. I'm not talking about like military tactics. I'm just talking about caring for people, knowing how to communicate and just incredible people. So I would 100% do West Point again. I'm very proud of, Kevin Ward and what he's doing with the program and just appreciate what you two guys are doing with this as well. And thanks for having me on.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate the kind words and, this was a lot of fun. I couldn't echo all the things you just said even more.
Yeah. Thanks.
Awesome. Well, have a good night.
Yeah. Hey, thanks. Thanks, Jordan. Thanks, Brian.
Thanks for tuning in to the BHAW Radio Show. If you like what you heard, be sure to subscribe and leave us a 5-star rating on your favorite podcast platform. If there's something you'd like to hear on a future show, reach out to us on any of our social media, Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter. Or you can reach us at email, bhaw.radio@gmail.com. We'd love to hear your thoughts, and as always, go Army, be Navy.